Mate, what is with all these NRL fantasy podcasts? They all sound the fucking same. Welcome to the Echo Chamber.
Good evening. Welcome to episode 8 of the Echo Chamber. With me tonight, we've got the Ginger, Rudley. How you doing, mate?
Oh, mate, I'm not fucking keen for the weekend, I must say that.
Jay-Z, you excited for some Vegas games, mate?
Yeah, it's a bit of a tease though. I don't know about only 2 games of footy on a weekend. I prefer the full round, but some's better than nothing.
Yeah, I'm pretty fucking excited. I'm Bryce. I'm your host this evening. Before we get stuck into some fantasy news, we might just do a quick roundup of some predictions on what we expect. So the first game at like 9 a.m. for me in the morning, I'm still going to be very hungover and very sick and sorry for myself, is the Raiders and the Warriors. What do you reckon about this, Jay-Z?
I think this is a really interesting game. I think you'll get a pretty fair indication of what both teams are going to look like for the year because they're sort of both in that middle of the pack. There's some good players on both rosters, but I think Canberra's forwards are probably going to be a little too strong for the Warriors, and I could see them winning comfortably. Like my view of the Warriors is that they're not going to be very strong this year, which is why I've sort of soured a bit on Metcalf in a sense, which we'll get to later. But I think they'll be competitive. I don't know. In short, it's going to be a really interesting game. I think it'll tell us a lot about the season ahead for both teams. But the teams that started poorly in Vegas last year didn't do very well. So, eyes on who wins this game.
Yeah, like I think it's going to come down to the halves. So we're going to be, and for me, the Raiders have got the better 7 in the team with Fogarty. I think the kicking game, I believe the field is actually shorter. So the kicking game's going to be really, really important. And you basically have got a rookie. This is going to be Metcalf's first full year as the dominant 7 in the team. I just think Fogarty's probably going to have that edge in the kicking game. Really, where you sitting, mate?
I think you bang on the money, mates. I have Raiders tipped. I'm also a big believer in they're going to have a good year this year. I think I've got them in the top 8. I think Fogarty is really going to help drive them through this game. But Warriors are going to put up a good fight. Warriors are a really underrated team, and they've got a really good pack. And that's really what's going to be fun to watch this game, is watching these two packs filled with really good, big fucking forwards hitting it out for, a good 80 minutes.
So the bookies are saying that we don't know fuck all about nothing because they got the Raiders as long odds here at $2.21. So they think the Warriors are going to get up. Must be where the money's sitting. 73% to 27%. I think we're all pretty comfortable that the Raiders will win this. Might be some cheeky money there.
Yeah,
I'm going to chuck some on
potentially.
that now, actually.
What is going to be the margin, fellas? Because there's tipping comp out there. So what are you going? 18 points, 12?
Nah, Raiders by 8. I reckon I'll keep it conservative round 1. Like you said, smaller field, so it'll probably be a bit of a forward battle. And come down to the halves. I think it'll be a close game. Neither side have really outrageously good attacking structures, I don't think. KO Eeks sort of lit up the trials, but I believe that in the regular season when it happens. But there's a lot of talent on both sides, but I think it'll be fairly contained in this first game. I think it'll be between the likes of Fisher Harris and Corey Horsburgh and Joe Tarpany and Mitch Barnett.
Yeah. Next game, moving on to, will be the Panthers and the Sharks. Oh, do you want to just give us your margin real quick there, Ridley? I'm interested.
Raiders by 4.
Raiders by 4. Okay, close game. The Panthers and your mighty guppies, the old gummy sharks themselves. Panthers heavy favourites in this game. Any chance at all for the Sharks, Jay-Z?
I actually really like Cronulla in this game. I think the side that Penrith have named just doesn't look great to me on paper. I like in the preseason, I think we're all banging on about Penrith. They've built this dynasty and got all these juniors coming through and all this depth, and then they've named Luke Garner at center in round 1. So I think Cronulla have what it takes to really abuse a second rower playing in the centers. They've got electric outside backs, and if they keep the game up tempo and fast and don't let Penrith sort of get into their grind, I actually think they'll win this game.
Yeah, a bit of a surprise support there for you, really. What do you think?
Yeah, of course, I'm pretty biased in this one, so I'm going to think that Sharks can pull this out of the bag. But, the Panthers do look vulnerable this year. And we've been saying that for 4 years, and each
That to
year
say.
I've been fucking laughed at. But this time, their back line. Well, I think it's also because Toho's out. Toho is a huge loss, especially in our pitch that's slightly shorter. That's going to require those back five to be doing the work, getting up the pitch. I think that's really going to hurt Penrith. And I'm just not really convinced. I think, as Jay Z said, Alamotti and Garner on a back, on one side, and then Casey McLean on the other wing against Sam Stonestreet. It just doesn't seem very as strong as it used to be. Saying that, Sharks will come out and drop the ball every 5 minutes, and that'll be the game.
Well, it's going to be dependent on how well the Sharks play, right? If the Sharks will need to play their best rugby league to have a chance at even a subpar Panthers team. Let's just be honest there.
Yeah, but
keen to see the
the
forwards
Sharks are a pretty consistent outfit, and they've got a really strong forward pack. I think an underrated out for Penrith is Liam Henry. He was very important for them down the stretch last year, and sort of, especially over the Origin period, played massive minutes and was really, really strong in what was his rookie season. Whereas Cronulla, like they just have a stack of really, really strong forwards. For Noah Blake, it's going to be really interesting to see how he fits into the mold. Is he going to play big minutes? But I certainly think losing Fisher Harris is a big blow for Penrith, and we'll really get to see what their forward pack's made of this game.
Can I just say that I feel bad for teams that have to put up with AFB starting on the pitch, and then when he comes off, have to instantly put up with Talakai coming onto the pitch. That is a pretty rough 1-2 punch, in my opinion. Those guys just do not get tackled easily.
Yeah, Talakai is lethal. He's really quick on his feet, and he's not the biggest of forwards, but he's a bit of a ball. He's like a Tamalolo's little brother type. Like for 20 minutes, you just send him out there and he goes and knocks blokes over, and it's cool to watch. He's very impressive around the middle of the road.
What are your guys' thoughts on Atkinson at 14? I've kind of always been the mind that Sharks should be playing a 4-forward bench and using Talakai as the utility 14 because he has so much versatility to play, as an outside back.
Go, mate.
I think in the modern game, and especially when you have forwards that can play big minutes like all of Cronulla's can, it really is beneficial to carry a utility, especially one that can fill in the back line. Like Atkinson can play pretty much everywhere 1 to 7 and probably even 9 if he had to. And having that sort of versatility is so good. Like if he becomes a Tyron Wishart style player that Melbourne have, like you could throw him on at lock as well feasibly and have him sort of, ball play around the ruck. It's really good. I don't see the benefit of having an extra forward on the bench over someone that can cover that many positions.
Okay, so I do have a question. Do we know if they're using the natural grass or the artificial turf for this game?
No clue.
Okay, I think
I'm not a groundskeeper, mate. Come
Yeah.
on.
I think
Ask it.
because the stadium has both. It's got both fields. Hopefully they're using the natural grass. Otherwise, all 4 teams that are playing over there are going to come back with like forfeit players. So that's just something I was thinking about earlier today, and I don't think anyone's really spoken about it. Is how bad artificial turf is on people's ankles, knees, joints. So let's just hope they use the natural grass. They do have that option to them. Moving into the actual fantasy part of this, we've got the 2 most expensive halfbacks in the game playing in the same game, round 1. Cleary versus Hines. Are you guys pretty high on the Sharks? Are you saying Hines is going to come out on top on this?
I don't know about that. Cleary's like quite clearly the number 1 player in the game, and even if Penrith don't win this game, I think he'll, leave his mark on the game. He very rarely doesn't have a good game. Hines, I don't know. He's a real confidence player, so I think it all depends on how Cronulla start the game. If they start fast and he gets an early try assist or something, he could take over the game feasibly. It's not out of question that he can outplay someone like Cleary. It hasn't happened in the past, but if the forwards get him on the front foot, there's every chance that he can do it.
What do you reckon, really? Your boy going to step up and actually win a game against the top 4?
Oh man, I'd fucking love to see it, but until that day, I'll fucking believe it when it happens. Like, I think they have a better chance of Trindle outperforming Cleary than Hines coming up in a big game,
Yeah.
and that's as a Sharks fan.
Right. So, I guess one thing I want to do now is we're going to show our teams on the podcast here, and we're going to talk through why we've selected the Vegas players we've selected. I think we've pretty much all got a very similar mix. Just there's some key differences, and maybe just a chat about how we're actually building our teams this year. So we'll start with my shit show to begin with. So the Vegas players I'm going with: Fisher Harris, Hosking, Cleary, the Hot Tamale, and J Cole. Oh, and Isaiah Yo up the top there. I've just pretty much gone with my guns and the two cheapies. My thinking behind this is that they're good. That's as deep as it goes. There's not too much behind it, fellas. I think Hosking's gonna. I think we were talking about this earlier. Jay-Z Hosking started last year with a 73 or 72 average last year, and he had an injury cloud around him then. I know that really you seem to think there's a minute issue going on, but I think he's such a machine that he's just going to smash it straight out of the park. Yeah.
I don't hate any of your picks. Like they're all fair enough. Like I think Tamale is almost a must-have with his fantasy pedigree in Cup. Like he has games where he's made 15 tackle busts in a single game and scored like an 80 with just one try, which is absurd for a 300k center winger dual position player. One thing that one of my Raiders mates pointed out to me is that Hopper played a lot of center in the trials and ran out with the reserve grade guys. So I'm not sure that we should be too concerned about him losing his spot, especially if the Raiders win the game, like we're sort of all tipping. Hosking, I'm not convinced that he's going to play 80 minutes. He probably will eventually, but he's got a calf injury coming into the season, which is a notoriously niggly injury where guys re-injure that all the time. Matty Nicholson's lurking somewhere, and they've got Mariota and Sasangi on the bench, and they can both spend some time on the edge. I don't think it'll be for big minutes by any means, but I definitely think they'll play a bit of time out there.
Yeah, I don't actually expect him to come straight in and play 80 minutes as well. I think he's going to play anywhere between 55 to 60 minutes, but with his gun PPM, which is like 0.9 on the edge, he's still going to get me a 50 in that 60 minutes. That's my expectation behind Hosking before moving into an 80-minute role and pumping out 60s.
Yeah, I mean it's possible, but I mean, how many second rowers that aren't David Fafita can do that?
Well, he
Not
can.
many.
Just on that, if you have Hosking over 50 minutes and under 70 minutes, he's historically averaged 42.5. So,
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I don't mind Hosking. I like him. He's one of my favorite. Like, he's a fucking awesome player to watch. But the thing is, like, with Sasangi on the bench, my money is that he will play edge, and he will play edge for 20 to 25 minutes, which is going to give you that 60 to 55 minute range. I just don't see Hosking making money here.
His
Yeah.
He's PPM beast. Like he's a workhorse beast. He's like a Preston sort of a player. So that's what I'm banking on basically. Zach Hosking being my overflow version or my Timu version of Preston.
I mean, fair enough. I mean, but you talked about it before his start to last season, but he had a lot of attacking stats in both of those games, like tries in his first two, try assists in both of them, a line break, 7 tackle breaks. They're just not numbers that you can keep up as a second rower. And like Ridley just pointed out, Sasangi's going to spend some time on that edge. The only thing where I could justify starting Hosking is if you see him as a season-long keeper. But again, as I said, I think Matty Nicholson hanging around, I think he will eventually come into the team and spend some time on his edge. So I would probably wait until like a Hudson Young got injured or something, or maybe the Origin period on Hosking personally. I'm super high on him if he has 80 minutes, and he's pretty easy to pivot to if he does. But I think he's just a bit too risky, especially given we have the split TLT. So if you're locked into Hosking, that's 600k of your cap pretty much gone that you can't use for next week when the rest of the teams get named.
Yeah. So the,
Also,
come on.
if I can continue, so just again, I love Hosking, but if you go to his 2024 averages, if you just look at his first two games where he played over 70 minutes, he had a PPM of 1.03. If you take out those two games and look at literally every other one, his PPM goes down to 0.72. He's not going to score well in 55 minutes.
Yeah. Cool. Well done. Moving on. Yeah, whatever. Dude. I'm calling Husky, bro. It's a gut feel. I watch him play. He's a good player. I
Fuck
like
you
him.
and your math.
Yeah,
It doesn't
dude.
agree with my narrative.
Yeah, right. You and your beluga mask can go fuck right off. Fucking.
Hey,
I mean, I could pick 3 games from 2023 and be like, yeah, the guy's a 58-point gun. It is what it is, right? So, stats only get you so far. I like watching Hosking play. He puts a lot of effort into it, and you say that he needs a lot of attacking stats. He's playing a Warriors edge that is fucking dismal, and he could come out and he could just blow 100 tomorrow or whenever it is on Sunday. So it is what it is.
I'd love to see it. I'd love to be wrong about Hosking. I want that kid to have another good season.
Yeah, he's a brilliant player, mate, and Panthers fucking just stuck him in a corner and turned him into a tackle bot. So he's got a lot more to his game than just that. I don't think there's too many other picks we really need to talk about in my team. Cleary needs to be the captain. I did put the V on Fisher Harris, and this is something that I would like to talk about. Is make sure coming into this round you've got your VC on somebody who plays first or second game. If you got it on someone that plays next Sunday, and they get like a flu or their wife has a baby or something, and you're stuck with a red dot with the V on it, you're fucked.
I know you haven't put the V on Yo. Interesting choice.
Well, there's no point in having the V and the C on the same team, mate. And plus, I want to give some. Plus,
doesn't really make a difference.
I want to put the V into Fisher Harris, bro. I want JFH.
Yeah, fire him up.
Yeah,
sometimes you
the
just
juice,
gotta get the boys revved up.
Yeah, I have seen people putting the V on Hosking that have him just to give him that juice to get him over the fucking edge. So
Yeah, true. That'll make his PPM 1.2.
Yeah, you'll score a hat trick, mate. Fucking sorted. In fact, I'm going to do it right now. Sold myself.
There you go. Every week, yeah. Fire him up.
Every week I put the V on someone. I send a photo of my team to that player to let him know, just to G him up for the game.
Just to get him sorted, bro. I'm also a little bit torn between how I want to do my loop this week. So at the moment, I'm looping Cole and Duffy with Brimo, but I'm also considering just playing a shit center, whoever it is, Toa, Tui, or whatever his fucking name is, or this idiot at the Eels that we think's got an edge, with Purdue in the centers, and then loop Mark with Tamale. I don't actually know how we're going to do it yet, but there's options there.
Should we talk about this shitty center edge guy you've got in your emergencies?
I mean, I don't think there's much point till next week.
I
thought it was a bit rude calling him an idiot. Like, what has he done to deserve that, man?
Yeah, he doesn't have a picture yet. That means he's not a real person.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. The word is he's like somebody somewhere on the Eels forums have been watching training, and he's been training on the edge. Is that the understand? That's my understanding of it.
Yeah, so I think it's come from the Cumberland Throw on Twitter, who's the resident Parramatta Twitter specialist, if you will. So
I must say, that'd be pretty brave of Riles to come in to a team that has like 4 edges and say, "Nah, fuck you. I'm taking someone who hasn't played properly before and also Kelmer." That isn't really just like the attacking strike that you used to have with Madison and Cartwright or Lane.
I mean, Madison's a bitch, though, right? Like,
Madison is a bitch.
I
He's a
love
bitch.
Madison. I have no idea why he's fallen out of favour. He's a phenomenal back rower, like absolute one of the best in the competition, and he's sitting on the pine behind Kelma Tuilangi for some reason.
I can tell you why he's out of favour. It's because he refused to pay the fine a couple of years back. We had to spend like 3 weeks on the sideline.
I seen him get that high tackle, like the P gave away the penalty, and immediately I thought, "It's fuck. If he gets charged, he's missing the first 4 weeks because he's not taking the fine."
Oh,
Yeah, I don't think there's
yeah.
much point talking about him. Till next week to see if he's in TLT. He's literally a placeholder. That could be one of the 3 shit centers that are
Oh
on
man, I
offer.
can't wait to have 5 centers in my team. It's
Well,
going to be so good.
I'm not. I'm going to have 3. So let's just have a quick chat about team setup then, right? If you're going to play Dylan Lucas on the edge, which is how I've got it set up, you probably still need 3 cheap centers.
Yeah.
Play 2, 1 on the bench. Because it's just not the wing fullback depth that I see. You will have a look at your team in a minute, and I think maybe you could do something different, but you probably haven't done the Garrick play that the rest of us have. And I don't think Jay-Z you've gone with Garrick either, but we can have a look at that in a minute as well. But
Yeah, Garrick's a bum.
I think the three cheap centers is the way to go, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Don't
Oh,
get more.
mate, I have like 13 centers at this point.
Yeah.
I've stopped counting. Like, there's so many of them. I'm just gonna play a team full of centers.
Centers and halves and split send.
Yeah, and then just play one other player in every other position.
Right. So I think we've flamed my team enough. My shit, whatever that is. I mean, this is probably not even going to be the team I play because I change it every 3 seconds. We'll bring up Ridley's team. Now, mate, what is this abomination you've got at the bottom of the screen in wing fullback with 2 players that aren't even playing?
Yeah, I
What?
must say, I think I'm a little bit psychotic, but I'm actually really rating having both of them. I think that's one of the better back lines I've seen any teams come out with. That's going to be pretty consistent in scoring. I really like having 2 halves in my wing fullback compared to people that have bought Ponga or another gun fullback that's going to have that roller coaster up and down, and I like having consistency. I think that I'm going to make up the scores I might lose by having about 1.1.5 million on the bench for round 1.
Is this Beluga Mass again? Like, if you... Is that what this is, man?
I just think that Campbell's going to average pretty consistently in that 55 to 60 bracket. And I think he's going to do that without too much variance.
Yeah, so
I just
what I'm
I just
looking
think
at...
it's going to be really safe scoring. The only concern is I'm going to have to play Tamale and Nawa for round 1.
But most
So at the
people are
moment
doing
I'm
that.
sitting... Yeah, so most people are going to have those people in their starting team anyway. My thought is that unless like Tamale comes out and shits the bed with like a teen score, I'm probably going to run this. If Tamale does shit the bed, I'm just going to drop JC and buy someone else and move Nawa into the starting wing fullback spot. That'll be my plan. Like I have a lot of. This gives me like this isn't locked in. It can change based on how the first 2 games go. I just like how this backline looks. It looks a lot stronger. I think my team balance has actually really worked out quite well as a result. The only area I'm concerned about is my edge. And I've still got to play around with that a bit. But everyone else is going to be running cheap centers. Everyone's going to be running a similar halves pairing. I think the forward, everyone's running some kind of combination of that, or Haas, or JFH. Everyone's got the same hooker positions. I just think the backline is a real good point of difference for me. That I just think it's going to be much more consistent.
Yeah, and so for our Spotify listeners, he's talking about AJ Brimson and Jaden Campbell, in case you can't see the screen right now. And I don't hate it. Like, it's not the worst. I do hate having 2 players that aren't playing round 1, and that's a lot of cap. I mean, I don't hate Jaden Campbell. I think he will be a consistent scorer. It's one of those guys that just never seems to get things together for a long enough period to warrant having him, apart from the back end of last season, which obviously he killed it. So he's probably a big reason why I didn't win fantasy last year. So fuck you, Jaden Campbell. But AJ Brimson, and I don't sort of get the love that people have for him. Watching their trials, yeah, he had a good game last week, but he kind of just seems like the passenger of the 2. And I know that's sort of how Brimson scores. Like, he gets points randomly, like he'll score tries, he'll get a random try assist, but I don't think he's going to get his share of the ball in that halves pairing. Like, he's going to be reliant on attacking plays and following up the likes of Campbell and Keeney and, even Tino's offloading and things like that. So he's kind of reliant on other people for him to score well. And I know the Titans draw is actually pretty good to start the season, so you could see it. But when I set out my starting teams, and you were sort of touching on this before, Bryce, is you want to have guys where you can be pretty confident where their points are going to come from. So when we get to my team in a second, a lot of my guys are just meat and potatoes guys. They're going to make 40 tackles a game and run for 100 meters a game, and anything else is a bonus. AJ Brimson's kind of one of those wild card picks for me where he might score well some weeks. He might come out and score 13 points. There's a massive in between in his scoring, and it is so varied that I don't love him as a pick, especially if you're going to go with another Titan. Happy to hear otherwise.
So
I don't quite. I do understand that he has historically been that kind of player who hasn't had that bread and potatoes, as you put it. Though having watched the trial game, and I know it's just a trial game, he did share a good portion of the kicking with JC. It wasn't just all JC kicking the ball, which I think is really going to elevate his base. And as you said, the draw for the Titans to start is really favourable for those attacking stats. And I really think people are we're going to see the Titans really put on some monster scores. I think they'll be shit in defense again, but I think they're going to keep the score line up there, and there's going to be plenty of attacking stats to flow, and it's going to be through Brimson, it's going to be through JC.
It's gonna be Keanu Keeney, mate. Let's be real. He's in for a delirium season. I'm telling you, he's having his Barber year. Like 2012, they're running it back. Des Hasler's just picked Keeney instead of Ben Barber.
Don't tempt me. I'll start with all 3 wing fullbacks from the Titans.
I don't hate it, but I don't like having both of them, I guess, is my sort of anger with that.
That is my point. Is I would definitely not be running both JC and Brimson. $1.1 million sitting on the bench is just handicapping yourself. That's just how I see it. There's so much more money you can spend. You're running White and Lucas which is good. Don't get me wrong, but you're now relying on a Duffy, a Cole, a Sandon Smith as your 16, 15 spot. Do you know what I mean? Like your bench is where you're probably missing, and Duffy can come out and score a 45. Cole could come out and get a 50. It's not like they can't score good points. It's just you're relying on them rookies to actually get points where some other people like on mine I'm looping. Whereas you can't loop this week because you've got to take Tamale and Nawa score if you go with these two.
A couple of things to unpack on there. First, I will be looping. So JC can just be swapped out if some of these scores come out bad from the players that are playing Vegas. Like I can quite easily adjust and change it. Secondly, everyone's going to be playing Duffy. That doesn't concern me. Cole is probably the graver concern. In which case, I would just need to see if I can figure out a way that loop him with someone else. But again, that's also just that if he comes out with a shit score on Sunday, I can really consider my position with JC, whether it's worth that sacrifice and whether his benefits throughout the next however many games he manages to stay fit will be worth it.
Yeah, and I
copying a low score from Cole.
I did just look at the stats for the trial game, and Brimson scored for kicked 250 meters, and JC 226. So
that would put me off Campbell, to be honest. Big ups for Brimson. I didn't expect him to kick for that many meters, but I mean, the whole argument behind Campbell is that he's not going to be like, not like other girls, not like other wing fullbacks because he has such a huge base, but he's going to be very similar to other wing fullbacks if Brimson's taking his fair share. Yep. So you'd probably argue that Brimson is the more appealing of the two now, knowing that. I admittedly didn't see the kick meter distribution, but I mean, if Brimson's getting the kick meters, I'd be far more tempted on him and less excited about Jaden Campbell.
Yeah. Good luck, Ridley, if you go with this. May the force be with you. Anything else we want to talk about, Ridley? You're pretty standard. Yo, Cleary, Metcalf.
We should probably talk about the horse, right? We should say something about the horse because I have him as well. I think with someone like him, where he has in the past averaged monstrously, like this guy is definition of PPM beast. Like he offloads, he runs for heaps of meters, breaks tackles because he's such a big unit. Fellow ranger, rudely, so you've got like a brethren there. I really like this pick, and I think with him starting, he should be owned by most teams, in my opinion.
So
Yep.
this was my pivot thing that I was gonna say before is with Hosking, as much as I love him and I'm gonna fluff him all night, there is the option to pivot to a horse and save myself 40k, right? So
Yeah, and I probably would. Like, part of my problem with my team, or the greatest struggle I've had, is on the edge, and I think Hosking doesn't really solve that problem. And if you can get someone around that price, but he's almost guaranteed to average 50, in my opinion, if he's starting. I really like Horse Pride. I think he's a almost must.
See, I was actually really hating on Horse recently, and I was having an argument with someone in one of the chats
was it
last
Beluga?
night. No, it was actually just some
Oh.
idiots in JBFA. But I was arguing with him about Horse, saying, "Oh, that's such a terrible pick." And I was like, I started doing the minutes for what the minute breakdown would be with that pack, just so I could point it out to him about how much of a dumbass he was. And by the end of my minute calculation, I realized the Horse has about 50 to 55 minutes, and therefore he's a buy. So I ended up looking like the idiot. Like, if you actually break down the minutes, I think it's fair to say Taps is probably going to be on about 55 minutes. Papali's going to be on about 40. Smithies will play about 55 to 60 at lock. Mariota will play about 30 minutes or so off the interchange. Sasungi will play 20 or 25, but they'll all be on an edge because he's historically done that, and it's what will cover Hosking whilst he's coming back from that calf injury. So if you do that, if you've got 240 minutes in those three forward positions on the pitch, essentially those roles all add up to 185 minutes, leaving the Horse with that 55. And with that PPM he gets a prop, which is about 1, he's going to have 10 points of value, and he's going to be a really good scorer.
Yeah, and Ricky's a bit erratic with his forward minutes as well, and he's harped on all off season about how Horse is leaned out and he's so much fitter. I mean, is he really going to be saying all this if he didn't intend to play him for more minutes? Like, I think 50 is kind of his floor, right? And I could really see him playing more minutes if the game demands it. Like Ricky said in the past, he thinks that Corey can play big lock minutes, and while obviously Smithies is there this week, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Horse played more of a lock role and Smithies was just the sort of battering ram up and down, make his tackles. And I could see it happening. I don't think it's a likelihood. I think you're probably looking at 50 to 55 for Horse, but I mean, at 1 ppm, he's 10 points of value. So I love it.
It is Ricky Stewart, and the only person in the world that I know that is more erratic and not, mentally stable is my wife. So we just really think about that when we talking about mids for the or anybody for the Raiders. It's they could be playing reserve grade next week, and after they score a hat trick, because Ricky Stewart has got no grip on reality. It's as simple as that. But yeah, Horse is a great option. 10 points of value, as you said, as a minimum. Yeah, if you like the Ginger Ninja, get him in there. We'll have a look at your team now, Jay-Z. And
Here we go.
you've got that. You got big pain. You faded Yo. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I can walk you through some of my picks. So Harry Grant, I think he'll be the best hooker in the game. I think last year was a down year for him. Melbourne are expected to be very good this year, and when Melbourne are good, he racks up attacking statistics like no other hooker in the competition. Payne Haas, for me, him and Yo are much of a muchness. I think he's just a little bit cheaper. Yo came off like a career year, while Payne had more of a down year. Again, I think the Broncos are going to be very good, and he's going to be leading from the front, so there'll be a lot of playing on the front foot. Offloads, tackle breaks, and he's just like a PPM monster. I didn't get to watch much of the Dogs Broncos trial, but he was on like 16 points in 8 minutes, and I'm like, that was enough for me to be like, all right, this guy's still got it. All the off-season talk of him being injured and hurting his ankle, like this guy's a superhuman. Like he's such a freak, and I strongly suspect he'll be the best mid in fantasy this year.
What do you reckon? What do you reckon about this Wilton fella? He's a sharky. He plays for your team, Ridley.
Yeah, I like him. There's been a few people talking about Wilton. I think he's a really safe pick. He's going to have a couple points of value. I don't think he has enough to justify it personally for my taste anyway, but I think if you just want to shore up your edge position a little bit, I think he's a great pick. I presume that's why you've gone for him, JC?
Yeah, and so like what I was talking about earlier is he's a real meat and potatoes kind of guy. Like he makes his tackles, makes his runs. I do think there's maybe a bit of attacking upside in him this year. Like he's 3 years into the full-time role now. Cronulla are expected to go up a level this year, and if they do, I suspect he'll probably get more ball. Obviously, with Trindle being or taking more of a sort of chief playmaking responsibility, you can probably expect him to get more footy on his edge. 80 minutes pretty much every week locked in. It's just not a lot to go wrong, and he's under 1% owned, so I really like him as a pod player.
So interestingly enough, with Mr. Wilton last year, when he played with Hines, when Hines was fit in the team, 47 average, and without him it was a 42. So just read into that what you want. Again, that's a Beluga stat that's just pulled out of my ass. But I think you might be right. There's a bit of value to be had with Tiggy, and I like it. Non-origin player. So plays a lot of the buys. I think he misses only one if you were going to hold him all year as a keeper. I like the call. I don't really like your other edge though, mate. That's a bit of poo poo right there.
Yeah, I don't mind Kelma too much. So this is why I don't pay too much attention to trial games. Like, yeah, he missed 7 tackles, whatever. He's going to do that sometimes. If he plays 80 minutes on the edge, he can miss bloody 10 tackles a game. It's fine. Um,
Do you also
he's
not
got
pay attention to
attacking
previous
upside.
seasons?
What was that?
Do you also not pay attention to previous seasons? Because he's also
Oh,
washed in
he's
them.
yeah, but he actually is a genuine attacking threat, and I had him last season when he sort of won the second row spot, and before he broke his thumb, he was scoring really well for me, and I owe it to my guy to get him again. 4 offloads in a game last season, 3 offloads, 4, 5 offloads in 2 games last season. Like this guy, even if he misses all the tackles in the world, he's gonna throw offloads and he's gonna score a few tries, and he's so cheap. Like I just don't see the downside with him.
Yeah, Jesus, take the wheel on that one. I don't see the upside of Tui. I think he's a spud, but good luck with that one. Anyone who takes Kelma, just know that before last year, his average was like 33 and 70 minutes. So outside of the good games he had last year, he's not been a great performer. I mean, it was at the Tigers though, right? He's in a much better team now, maybe. Eels
Yeah,
are in
no
for a
idea.
tough year. Eels in for a tough year, aren't they?
I don't think so. I think Eels will be very good this year as long as Moses stays fit.
So
Yeah,
I
okay.
just want to quickly raise Jay-Z. You just spent a good few minutes banging on about how bad my team was because it had 2 players sitting on the bench for 1.1 million in round 1. And I'm looking at you with Munster and Grant at 1.3 million on the bench in round 2.
Yeah, but these guys are elite keepers. You had bloody Jaden Campbell and AJ Brimson. Like,
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of a difference in the two. Like,
I don't know,
Grant,
mate.
they're both feasibly like a 55 average plus. Like, AJ Brimson would be lucky to hit 40, mate.
Please don't talk blasphemy about my Titans boys, okay?
My beautiful Titans boys.
I mean, that is the one difference I have noticed as well. You've stuck with the Munster in your team. Me and Ridley, I think we both faded Munster.
No, I still have money.
Oh, you still got money? I faded him just because of Metcalf, but I do see that you don't have Metcalf in your setup. You a bit worried about Metcalf, JZ?
Yeah, I am a little. Like, there is definitely upside to Metcalf. Like, he's going to kick more than he did in the past, and what he kicked in the past was virtually for nothing. But in saying that, I think the Warriors are going to be really bad. He's not a great defender. He doesn't have like a great edge player next to him either. Like, it's Nia Corey at the moment, I think. I can see things going wrong for him. I think he'll be good. But what are we expecting from him? Do you think he's going to be a 45 average player all of a sudden? Like,
42
you take
yes.
into account the extra base stats he's going to get, right? But also feasibly he's going to score less tries because he's not going to do as much support running and being sort of the run first type guy. So you have to sort of take that into account. And again, I just don't think the Warriors are going to be very good this year, and I think that's going to affect him. I'm still on the fence. Like, I might start with him, I might not. He's not in my team at the moment just because we have such a surplus of halves, and I'd much rather hold on to a Munster than let go of Munster for a guy like Metcalf.
You do remember his goal kicking, right?
Yeah, of course, but I mean, Tanner Boyd's waiting in the wings. Like Harris Tavita, and I was actually looking at this earlier today. In some of the games he played last season, kicked for monstrous kick meters, like 300 plus. Admittedly, it was playing next to Tamari Martin, but the Warriors coach is on record coming out and saying, we're not going to play our halves like other sides play their halves. We're not necessarily going to have one guy that is a dominant ball player like we had with Sean Johnson. So that's one thing that's sort of playing into my mind as well. And I think it just fits my team composition a bit better, especially with Cole being named for the Panthers, not owning him.
Yeah, and I think it's a fair point. There's obviously definitely some risk in the Metcalf play. It's just that he is priced at the 400. So if he does go absolute crap on Sunday, jumping down to J. Cole next week, if you don't have him, even though you should have him, whatever reason you don't have, you can jump down to a cheap guy, right?
No, but that's the thing, though. What cheap guy are you jumping down to? You should realistically, you should own all the cheap guys in round one.
Well, you can't because there's 15 different fucking 250k centers, and you can't fit all them in your team.
Just watch me.
So, I mean, you've only got 2 in your team right now, so you've got room, bro. Like
my entire bench may be averaging 30, but they're all making 100k, so I don't give a shit.
You know,
I don't have 2. I've got 5, mate. I've got Lucas. I've got Toya. I've got Toa,
cheap ones,
Jack
cheap
Bird,
ones.
Marky Mark,
the 250k ones, mate. You've only got
and
2.
Tamale. And Purdue will be in there as well. Honestly, he's not in here because I forgot he existed. So,
so yeah, so you know, there's that options there. You got, as you said, there's Purdue, there's Toya, there's Toa, there's maybe the guy at the Eels comes along to 250k. I think there's definitely going to be options to dump. Whereas if he goes and gets himself a 50, you're missing. It's harder to get up to him from somebody than to go down to him. Does that make sense? Like to go down away from him.
I get where you're coming from, but I will say now, Luke Metcalf is not going to be a keeper half.
No,
there's no way that happens.
I don't think so either.
No.
I
average 44, 45 is my estimation.
Yeah. If I can get to Munster, if I can like work my team out and get to Munster over Metcalf, I'll do it because he's just a much better player. But if I can't, if I have to destroy the balance, I'm not gonna do that. If I had to dump someone like Garrick, it'd wreck my soul. So it's just not gonna happen. You're also missing possibly the greatest fantasy buy of the year in your team, and we know you love him so much. Do you want to just talk us through why Seyfarth's not in your team again?
So point 1, he's a massive bum, completely horrible football player. Jack Bird spent some time on the right edge at the end of the game in the trials. I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen during a game, but it's a possibility. Jack Bird's played on the edge in the past. Him being off the bench sort of gives him more question mark over his role. I know he's trained as a lock, but I mean, if Alex Twal's going to start over him, like it sort of says something, right? I just don't like him. I think he's a bad footballer. His stats are good when he plays 80 minutes, but he's played 3 starting games in a row once in his career. So if he can keep that up, good luck to you. But I think betting against someone that is terrible at the game is probably a good play in my mind. Again, I don't fully hate him as a fantasy pick. I hate him as a footballer. So let's make that distinction clear.
I do find that makes it a lot harder to buy play. Like it is a game at the end of the day, and I feel like you may need to enjoy watching the players play that are in your team. Otherwise, the moment they do something wrong, you're just waiting for fucking Monday morning lockout to rage trade the cunt clean out of your fucking team to send him to oblivion. So I actually don't mind the whole take on. I just don't like the player. You know, there's some people.
It's the same argument as Kelma Tuolangi. Like, if you don't like him as a footballer,
exactly. I just think
how can you have Seyfarth?
Yeah.
There's a slight difference there because Kelma Tuilagi has at best 10 points of value. Seyfarth has potentially 20 points of value. There's a slight.
20 points of value. You think he's gonna average 55?
You did
That's
some-
what he's historically done when he plays over
No,
70
You
minutes.
got some
No, he
beluga
has
mask
not.
going on there,
That's-
brother.
Yeah, Jesus, what's he gonna do? Find like 20 extra tackles a game or something?
I'm
Like,
sorry, if you
is
go
he
onto
picking up kick meters and goal kicking as well? Like,
Go onto Footy Stats right now. Change all his starting second row over 70 minutes. His average is 54.3.
Did he play more than 60 minutes in the trial as well? Like, what's going on here? Holy shit.
yeah, he played like 70 in the trial. I
I'm not
think.
saying
So
he's
he's
going to
pretty
have
much
20 points of value.
guaranteed to play 90 minutes.
Fuck me.
I'm not
Hashtag
saying he's going
beluga
to have 20 points of value. I'm saying there is a potential here for him to have 20 points of value.
Stay fast.
Just yeah.
Like, if he plays 80 minutes, he historically scores really well in the position without much attacking stacks.
Yeah,
Like,
but it's
he's-
such a big if, right? Like, look at that sample size. The sample size is about 8 games, man. And there's 3 that are consecutive. Everything else isn't even, like, remotely consecutive. Like, round 3, 2022, round 7, round 9. Like, what's happening in between these games? They're like, all right, it's a good idea. Let's put Seyfarth in the team. And then they watch him play a game. They're like, no, let's go back to the other guy.
You're going to be
Like-
really mad when Seyfarth hits 750k.
I would laugh, honestly. That'd be very funny.
I do want to talk about one other player you've got in your team. I noticed we all have him. I went on about him a little bit last night, but I just want to hear your thoughts on him, which is White from the Roosters.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Spencer's only out for 2 weeks, but I think after the trial game and how poorly they started, it wouldn't surprise me if, with how well White played when he came on as well, compared to the rest of the pack, that he is going to play like that sort of Terrell May. Like, some weeks he'll get 50 to 60 minutes, other weeks he might only get 30 to 35, but there's enough value in him, and he sort of plugs the gap of edge as well, in a sense, because he's got that dual position, which is so valuable, and he's so cheap. Like, he has to make money, right? And I
Sort of
think the
monster
Roosters
PPM.
run a utility.
Yeah. I'm happy to take the punt on White because once again he's that top end of the cheapies, maybe the bottom end of the mid range. And if you do get a cheap edge that comes along, it's not hard to jump off White onto a basement guy and ride that up. Like, whatever potential losses you have is going to be, quickly fixed by jumping on a younger kid that's coming up, or 250. Who knows? Fucking really might be right and get fucking Gozzi's getting 80 minutes and scoring 300 a week at the.
Yeah, he's actually
Broncos.
not in my team at the moment. Like,
Heartbreaking.
Gozzi will be coming into my team if that bench does not have Piakura or Hunt on it.
I will say that Gozzi's been a little bit sick from the head knock. I mean, he does have another week or so, but he was pretty sick after that game after he got his head taken off. So,
I also think with White, one thing to note is that the Roosters scored so many points last year. So his PPM was really good with so much downtime that they were the best attacking side in the competition. And there were some games like where Terrell May scored 20 points, right? One of the best PPM guys in the competition. They're not going to be that good this year.
No.
I would expect them to have to do a lot more defense and the ball probably be in play a bit more often. Like, they're not so bad that they're going to get blasted off the park every week, but they're not good enough that they're going to score millions of points with Chad Townsend as their halfback. So I think there is some room for his PPM to improve as well.
Yeah, like White's making 30 tackles the first 2 games against Broncos and Panthers. Like, that's just probably what's going to happen, and that's probably in the first 25 minutes. They're just going to be on the back foot against them 2 teams. So,
And he's going to play bigger minutes those 2 games as well because of the Lenu suspension.
Yeah.
I really rate White. I think he's going to get his money moving in the right direction with those 2 games. And I still think he'll have a pretty decent role once Lenu's back anyway, as for those reasons you've discussed, Jay-Z.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's important to note is your starting team is really an area where you can take some risks on guys that have sort of short-term upside, because all they need to do is get the ball rolling. And if they make, like, this is what I did with Hosking last year, right? And it sort of launched me into making 150k really quickly. Is I had him for the first 3 rounds. He averaged about 70 made 100k and then got injured, and I traded him straight away to upgrade someone. And if White comes out and averages like 45 to 50 the first few weeks, which he absolutely can do, and his scores in trial games haven't been too shabby either. It just gets money rolling in the right direction, and he might not be someone that you keep in your team for a long time, but if he can make a lot of money in a short period, and you can then flip him and then bring in maybe like a Titans player or something, for example, then I think that's a really profitable thing to do.
So against the Roosters, White got 37. I don't know exactly how many minutes he played, but he got 37 fantasy points, and that was an absolute
against the
drumming.
Roosters.
No, the
Against the
Knights,
Knights,
against the Knights. Yeah, sorry.
There we go.
Yeah, well, they did beat themselves in that game, so I wasn't far off, mate. But yeah, so you're right. He didn't score too bad. Nat Butcher got a 66, so it's just ebbs and flows. Yeah. Is there anything else we want to sort of touch on before we wrap this up with Vegas? Just remember, it is early in the morning. I think East Coast. It's like 8 a.m. or something. You guys, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a pretty decent time.
11 a.m. for
Oh,
me,
is
I
it?
think.
Am I behind? No, the very first game, because like there's games
Yeah.
before the NRL.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm talking about Canberra Warriors. Is it 11 a.m.?
11 a.m. But I think their games start a couple of hours before that. So for me, I'm gonna have to get up at like freaking 7 o'clock in the morning or something ridiculous to actually watch the rugby league. So I'm pretty excited. I'm looking forward. Fantasy's back. Got some green ticks on the screen. Let's just hope they stay green and they don't turn fucking red crosses into round 2, because I'm a bit worried
We're about
about
to watch 9 centers die in week 1.
Yeah, that's normally what happens. Fucking Blaze comes along and kicks Cole out of your team, and then one of your cheap centers dies, and you're fucking 2 trading from week 1's never fun. So I do like your Payne Haas call over Yo. I think that's got some testicular fortitude about it. Your take makes sense. And Wilton's a good shout for you, Jay-Z. Really, your fucking dual Titan backline is just feral. It's disgusting. I don't like it. You need to fix it ASAP. The rest
Thanks,
of your
mate,
team's
for the vote
got
of confidence.
your the rest of your team's not too shabby though. If you could just stop spending $1 million on nothing, that'd be great. And then I'm hoping, round 1, 30k or something like that rank. That'd be good for me. That's about where I think my team's going to end up, because that's just feral. I do notice.
It's about where you finished last year, right?
Oh, mate, I was I crawled back to inside the top 10k, mate.
I'm just joking.
I will say, the fact that you two don't have Garrick is kind of triggering to me, but we can wait for next weekend to talk about that.
Triggering.
Why the fuck would you have Garrick as well?
Garrick's a beast, mate. 50 average this year. Fucking lock it in, sorted.
You know what I really thought I needed this year after I bought 5 chippy centers? Was another center that was 500k.
Mate, he fixes a wing fullback problem where I don't have to take a fucking red dot round 1.
You said it, but you know what? I guarantee JC's going to out fucking average fucking Garrick this year.
100% he will. But by the time, I'm ready to buy Jay-Z, I'll have the money to bring him in, and he's still going to be 700k. Or he might even be cheaper, because, he's going to get injured in one game. So.
By the time you're ready to buy JC, he'll be injured.
Yeah, that's true. Round 3?
Well, yeah. So my gripe with Garrick is that he's not a keeper in my mind. When you have guys like Lucas and Herbie and Firma available at center, he's like, maybe he's a top 5 center at best, but he's not an elite one. And I think, especially early in the season, your goal should be to get as many elite players in as possible. And Garrick's just not that guy for me.
But he averages 50, and he has for years.
Yeah, that's if we ignore the fact that he gets his head fucking blown apart every 4 weeks.
Everyone, like Ponga's spent more time out than Garrick, and you've got Ponga in your team. I don't get that. I don't get that take.
He's averaged 50 plus even with the head knocks is the reasoning.
Well, Garrick's average, yeah. We'll talk about it next week. Do you want any parting gifts really to the world?
Sharks are paying $13 for the premiership, and I think that's just free money Go get a second mortgage and get that one on it.
Fuck me. Jay-Z?
Just buy Big Red. You know, have you seen what is it, Talladega Nights? If you don't chew Big Red, then fuck you. If you don't pick Big Red, then fuck you.
Yeah, rightio. Shake and bake, and on that note, join our fucking Echo Chamber podcast league fucking thing. There'll be a link or something in the description. Copy the code. Is that what it is? The code thing? Yeah. Get on the code, get in the league, get joining. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week for an actual TLT where we'll actually have something fucking decent to talk about.